You can save for retirement for 40 years and still lose tens of thousands of dollars because you turned on the wrong paycheck first. The IRS won't warn you. Social Security won't warn you. Medicare won't warn you. They'll simply apply the rules exactly as they're written, and by the time you discover what happened, there's usually nothing left to fix. Today, I'm going to show you the retirement income order that most people get wrong and why getting it right can matter more than how much you saved. Most people think about retirement income like three separate things sitting there waiting for them. The 401k, the savings they spent decades building. Social Security earned from every paycheck they ever cashed, and a pension if they have won the monthly check from a job that rewarded loyalty. The natural assumption is that the order doesn't matter much. Turn them on when you're ready. Take what you need. Here's what nobody explains before you retire. These three income sources interact with each other in ways the tax code built in and never bothered to announce. The order you activate them determines your tax exposure, your Medicare costs, and most importantly, what your spouse receives if you're the one who dies first. Most people discover this the way Dorothy did, after. Here's the thread I want you to hold through this entire video. Being legally entitled to retirement income and actually keeping it are two different things. The gap between them is the order, and the order is set by a small number of decisions, most of them made in a single year, most of them permanent that almost nobody thinks through carefully before they're done. Let me show you exactly what I mean, starting with the decision that cost Dorothy the most. Frank retired after 31 years as a mail carrier. When the pension paperwork came, the administrator gave him two options and a deadline. Option A, $3,140 a month, for as long as Frank lived. The day he died, payments stop. Dorothy gets nothing. Option B, $2,680 a month, lower. But if Frank died first, Dorothy would keep receiving that amount for the rest of her life. Frank looked at that $460 difference and made the decision that felt completely reasonable in the moment. He was healthy. He expected to outlive Dorothy. They could use the extra money. He chose option A. His accountant told him to claim Social Security at 62 while he was at it. More income right away. Frank lived until 74. Dorothy opened the mailbox the month after he died, expecting the pension check she'd watched arrive for 10 years. It wasn't there. She called the pension office. They were polite. They walked her through the form Frank had signed. Everything was exactly as elected. There was nothing they could do. Frank had died thinking he took care of Dorothy. He thought he had. He hadn't. Here's the first thing I want you to understand about the pension election, and it's the thing almost no HR office explains before you sign. Most people treat the pension election as an income question. How much do I get per month? It's actually a life insurance question. What happens to my spouse's monthly income the day I'm gone? The single life option, option A in Frank's case, pays the highest monthly amount. When you die, it stops entirely, not reduced, gone. The joint and survivor option pays less monthly, but when you die, your spouse continues receiving a percentage, 50%, 75%, or the full amount depending on which version. For the rest of their life, here's the number you need to run before you make this election. Write down your spouse's monthly income if you died tomorrow. Their own Social Security only, any pension in their own name only, any savings that are truly independently theirs, add those up. Now subtract that from your current monthly household expenses. If the gap is more than zero, the single life option leaves your spouse short by exactly that amount every single month for as long as they live. That calculation takes 15 minutes. Frank never ran it. Now here's something that made Frank's situation even harder, and this is the piece Dorothy didn't find out about until after he was gone. Because Frank worked for a government employer, his pension came with a federal rule attached to it called the government pension offset. I want to be careful here because this rule has complex interactions. The specific numbers depend on individual circumstances, and the rules themselves can be subject to legislative changes, so I'd strongly encourage you to verify your own situation at essa.gov or with a qualified professional. But the core concept is important to understand. The government pension offset the GPO can reduce or in some cases eliminate the Social Security spousal or survivor benefit a spouse expects to receive based on their partner's work record, specifically when that partner receives a government pension. Dorothy had spent years assuming that when Frank was gone, she'd receive a survivor benefit based on his Social Security earnings, a benefit she had watched him build over a working lifetime. She didn't receive it. The GPO reduced it to zero. Nobody at HR had mentioned it. Nobody at Social Security had sent a letter. The rule sat quietly in the fine print, and Dorothy found out about it from a tax form, alone, 3 months after her husband died. If you or your spouse has a government pension, search government pension offset at essa.gov and understand how it may affect your survivor planning before those decisions are made, not after. Here's what I want you to take from part 2. The pension election is the first decision in the sequence. It needs to be the first one you think through carefully months before retirement, not the week HR calls asking for your answer. Run the survivor income calculation, understand the rules that apply to your specific pension, and elect the option that protects the person most likely to be living alone in their late 70s. In most cases, that's not the option with the highest monthly number. Now let's talk about the decision with the most lifetime money on the table, and the one that's made most carelessly. Go to essa.gov when you get a chance and pull up your Social Security statement. Find 3 numbers. Your projected monthly benefit at 62, at your full retirement age 67 for most people watching this, and at 70, look at the gap between 62 and 70. For most people watching this, that gap is somewhere between $800 and $1,200 a month, every month for the rest of your life, adjusted upward for inflation each year. Here's the calculation almost nobody runs before they file. Take that monthly gap, multiply it by 12, then multiply by a reasonable estimate of how many years you expect to be retired. Write that number down. For most people watching this, it represents a very significant difference in lifetime income, often well into 6 figures, sitting inside what feels like a simple administrative decision, and most people make that decision in about 10 minutes. Here's where it connects back to Dorothy. Frank claims Social Security at 62, the earliest possible age, the smallest possible benefit. When you claim early, your monthly benefit is permanently reduced, and that reduction doesn't just affect you. It becomes the survivor benefit your spouse inherits if you die first. When one spouse dies, the survivor doesn't keep both Social Security checks. They keep only the larger one, which means Frank's reduced benefit, the one he locked in at 62 because the accountant said it made sense, became the number Dorothy was stuck with for the rest of her life. Not as a survivor benefit on top of her own as her primary income, because the government pension offset had already eliminated the spousal benefit she'd expected. 2 decisions, the pension election and the early Social Security claim, compounded against each other in ways neither of them saw coming. Let me be honest about something. Before I go further, there are real reasons people claim Social Security early, and not all of them are wrong. If you have no other source of income and the bills require it, claiming early may genuinely be the right call for your situation. I'm not going to tell someone to go without heat to protect a future benefit. If you have serious health concerns that affect your life expectancy, the math on waiting changes. That's a legitimate consideration. And if you have a spouse with a substantially larger benefit, one solution is to have the lower earner claim earlier while the higher earner waits, bringing income into the household in the short term while protecting the larger benefit that will eventually become the survivor benefit. These trade-offs are real. Every situation is different. What I want you to walk away with is not a rule that says always wait until 70. I want you to walk away having run the numbers specifically, the lifetime income gap and the survivor benefit calculation before you make this decision, not after. The one-sentence version, the higher earner's Social Security benefit isn't just their retirement income. It's the income the surviving spouse will likely live on alone, potentially for a decade or more. Size it accordingly. Here's one more thing before we leave Social Security, and this is the one that makes people genuinely frustrated. When they first hear it, if you were married for at least 10 years and you're currently unmarried, you may be entitled to collect Social Security based on your ex-spouse's work record, if that benefit is larger than your own. Your ex doesn't have to know. Their own benefit isn't reduced. You don't need their cooperation or even their awareness. The eligibility rules have specific requirements, so check essa.gov or call Social Security directly to understand whether this applies to your situation. I bring it up because I've sat with people in their late 60 seconds who had been collecting a smaller benefit for years without knowing a larger one might be available. One phone call can clarify whether that door is open. Now here's the part of Dorothy's story that took the longest to explain, the part on the tax return. Frank had a 401k. When he retired, he started drawing from it to supplement his Social Security and pension. It made sense on paper. The money was right there. He could see it. It felt safer to spend what he could see. What he didn't know, and what Dorothy discovered on that first tax return, is that pulling from a 401k at the same time you're collecting Social Security triggers a tax interaction that most people never see coming. Here's how it works in plain English, and I want to be clear that the specific numbers depend on your filing status, your total income picture, and your individual circumstances, so treat this as a framework to understand, not a formula to calculate on your own. Your 401k is a pre-tax account. Every dollar that comes out is ordinary income in the year you take it. Social Security has its own tax rule sitting on top of that. The IRS looks at a combined income figure, your other income plus a portion of your Social Security, and if that combined figure crosses certain thresholds, A meaningful percentage of your Social Security benefit becomes taxable income. For many middle-income retirees, the income level where this kicks in is lower than they expect, and when it does, a withdrawal that seemed modest on its own can trigger taxes on income they thought was protected. That's the rule Dorothy was looking at on the tax return. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't fraud, it was the sequence. The 401k and Social Security running simultaneously, interacting with the tax code exactly as written. Here's what the sequence looks like when it's done in the right order. In the years between retirement and when Social Security is maximized, drawing from the 401k to cover living expenses keeps Social Security benefit growing while you're spending from the account that doesn't earn delayed credits. When Social Security eventually starts at a higher amount, the tax picture is also potentially cleaner because the account balance and the future required distributions from it may be lower. This is sometimes called the bridge strategy. You're using the account as a bridge to a larger guaranteed income. I want to be straightforward. Whether this strategy makes sense depends heavily on your individual situation, your account balance, your other income, your tax bracket, your health, and how long you plan to wait on Social Security. This is a concept to explore with a tax professional who understands retirement income sequencing, not a rule to apply mechanically. What I want you to understand is the principle. These three income sources interact with each other, and the order you activate them can affect your tax exposure in ways that aren't visible until the bill arrives. Let me pull everything together into a clear sequence, not a formula, a way of thinking through these decisions in the right order before they're final. First, before you retire. Think through the pension election using the survivor income calculation, not the monthly income calculation. Write down what your spouse's financial picture looks like without your pension. Let that number guide the election. This decision is permanent, second in the years between retirement and Social Security maximization. Understand the tax interaction between your 401k withdrawals and Social Security before you start drawing both simultaneously. Talk to someone who understands retirement income sequencing, not just a tax preparer, but someone who works with these decisions specifically. The window for managing this is the years before everything is running at once. Third, on Social Security timing. Run the lifetime income calculation and the survivor benefit calculation before you file. Not the break-even calculation, the survivor calculation. The higher earner's benefit is the number that protects whoever lives longer. Size it with that in mind. That's the sequence. 3 decisions, a specific order, a specific time to think through each one. The painful thing about all 3 of these is the same. They're made once, they're made early. And the consequences play out for decades in ways that are almost entirely invisible until something changes: a death, a tax return, a letter that doesn't arrive, and the full picture becomes clear all at once. I want to speak directly to the people who are already retired and wondering whether any of this still applies to them. On the pension election, in most cases it's permanent. What you can do is make sure the rest of your financial plan accounts for what your spouse will actually receive, not what you assumed. Make sure they have resources in their own name that don't depend on you surviving. On Social Security, there's a limited do-over, if you claimed. Within the last 12 months, you can file a withdrawal, repay what you received, and restart as if you never filed. This is available once, within that window only. If you're past that window but you haven't yet reached 70 and you're between your full retirement age and 70, you can voluntarily suspend your benefit. Payments stop. Your benefit turns delayed credits for each month of suspension. It's not as good as never having claimed, but for someone who has other income now and wants a larger benefit going forward, it's worth looking into. On the tax sequencing, the window for managing the interaction between 401k withdrawals and Social Security may still be partially open depending on your age and account size. Talk to someone who works specifically with retirement income decisions before assuming nothing can be improved. The most important thing I can tell someone who's already retired is this: don't spend energy on regret for what's locked in. Spend it on what's still movable, because the ongoing decisions about how much to draw and when those continue for the rest of retirement, and they still matter. Dorothy got through it. I want to be clear about that. She's not destitute. She's not a cautionary tale about financial ruin. She's a capable woman who figured out how to manage, but there's something she said to me that I haven't been able to let go of. She said, "Frank spent 31 years taking care of this family. He signed every form they put in front of him. He did everything they asked him to do, and somewhere between the HR office and the Social Security Administration, the information that would have changed those decisions never reached him. Not because he wasn't smart enough, not because he didn't care enough, because nobody sat him down before the forms were signed and said, 'Here's what these decisions mean for the person who might be sitting at this table alone someday.' That's the entire reason this channel exists, not to teach tax brackets, not to turn you into a retirement planning expert, to make sure you have the conversation and run the calculations before the forms are signed and the windows close. Here's what I want you to do this week. None of it costs anything. Pull your Social Security statement at ssa.gov. Find the gap between your age 62 benefit and your age 70 benefit. Run the lifetime math, write the number down, then look at that number and ask yourself, is my current plan sized for that gap? If you have a pension decision ahead of you, run the survivor income calculation before you call HR back. Write down your spouse's independent income. Compare it to shared expenses. Let the gap tell you which option to elect. And if you're drawing from a 401k and collecting Social Security at the same time, talk to someone who understands how those two interact before assuming your current approach is optimal. The system will not walk you through this. There is no government office whose job it is to call before these decisions are final. Every agency is waiting for you to contact them. The forms sit on a shelf until you ask for them by name. The retirees who get this right aren't luckier than you. They aren't wealthier. They simply had the full picture in front of them before the decisions were permanent. Now you do too. If this video helped you see something you hadn't seen before, share it with one person who is within 5 years of retirement. They may be sitting right at the moment when every one of these decisions is still ahead of them. I'll see you in the next one.